Hello and welcome to Data Planet. I'm Emma Davis, and today's guest is Renaud Delaquis, head of marketing at Coastline Academy. Welcome to the show, Renaud.
Happy to be here.
All right, so let's start with some context on Coastline Academy. What do you guys do?
We are a driving school. We are at this point, the largest driving school in the US. We started off right before COVID, and we were on a mission to become the first national driving school. And so it's been a very exciting journey since. We've been growing a lot, and we now serve over 1,000 towns and cities across 8 states.
Okay, and there are sort of two different elements to that, right? There's like an online instruction as well as actual driving instruction.
Yeah, so it depends on a state level. Every state is different, but a lot of the times in most of the places where we operate, there's two key products. The first one will be driver's ed. That lets you this leads to your permit. And then once you have your permit, most states will require to take driving lessons as well. And so that leads to your driver's license.
Okay. And so how do those two main offerings interact? It seems like it should be a pretty clean funnel of someone does the online school, they get their permit. Great. Well, I already know Coastline, so I'll see if I have a Coastline instructor nearby.
Yeah, you would think.
I would, yeah.
But the conversion from one to the other is surprisingly low. And that's something that we've been increasing over time, but it's definitely a challenge. And I think what happens here, and that was like the first wake up call for me when I joined, is like, oh, okay, there's no loyalty here. There's
Yeah.
there's like no brand loyalty. And I think what happened is the driver's ed component is online in many states. They've approved the online course, the online version. And so what happened is you had companies coming in, let's say like 20 years ago, and really dominating that space. And actually, that's one or two companies who really dominated just the online portion, and then the behind the wheel driving schools. They're not tech savvy. Most of them, they're not like they're lagging behind technology wise most of the time. And so they really focus on the behind the wheel portion. And so you have this clear split between those two products. And we are one of the rare driving schools that actually merges those two together.
Interesting. And so what do you attribute the sort of disconnect? You said it's a lack of loyalty, at least to Coastline
Well, brand
Academy.
loyalty, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
they will just like teens. I've interviewed hundreds of teenagers. I think it's a lot of it, honestly, is just apathy in terms of like they don't really care. It's like, yeah, I need to have my driver's ed. I'll take my driver's ed, and that's all I care about for now. The price is like these are the two products. So driver's ed typically will be it's $25 to $45. Like it's a low cost offering, and then driving lessons it's around like $500 for a package. So they're not going to buy both at the same time. In fact, teenagers will often buy the first part, and then the parents will buy the driving lessons afterwards. And so you have two clients here. And so you're not going to have a teenager that really advocates for this driver's ed company to also be the one providing behind the wheel lessons. And so that's the challenge that we've been working on for the past few years.
Yeah. And it's easy for me to at least intuitively understand if I'm the parent and I'm making that decision, I'm less concerned about like, yeah, that seems easy enough. We worked with them before, and more concerned about my child is about to drive a car for the first time. And I want to, even if it's, a Coastline Academy instructor is just as qualified as, the instructor at the driving school down the road. If they know somebody who used the driving school down the road, then it's okay. Well, I'm just going to do that because I know that nothing bad happened to their kid and that their kid got their license. It
Exactly.
feels, yeah.
It's difficult to dethrone a driving school that's been in business for 40 years because they have generational clients. And we're the newcomer, so they don't know us. And it's even more difficult because typically you don't go to driving school twice. So you don't know if your experience was a good one. You don't know where that sits compared to other driving schools, but what you do know is that Bob's driving school down the road that's been there for 40 years that my mom went to is perfectly fine. And so I'm just going to go there. It's like the default option. And chances are they don't offer online driver's ed, so I'm not going to go there. I'll just do this online, and then I'll go to that normal driving, to the driving school that's been there forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's what we're competing with. Now we're getting better at it, and we also started acquiring these schools too, which makes it a lot easier. But it's definitely a challenge. And it's a fun one. To be clear, this is like the challenge that got me to join Coastline, because I
You're
saw that.
not complaining. You're just,
Well, I'm not
yeah.
complaining. This
Yeah.
is a fun challenge to solve.
Yeah. So speaking of fun challenges for Coastline Academy, there's also this interesting challenge of like supply and demand you guys have in terms of, trying to break out into new markets where there is demand, but you might not have the supply yet. You might not actually have instructors there or an established, instructor practice. I don't know how you refer to it, versus we have capacity with our existing markets and how do we fill that? So can you talk about, but first of all, did I characterize that properly, and how are you handling that?
Yeah. And I think so I came from digital products where this was not a problem. If
Hmm.
if you have an online course, I can sell an infinite amount of online courses. So as long as I have leads coming in and it's profitable, we're all happy. Now we're hitting a wall with instructor capacity, because an instructor can only give X amount of lessons per week, and any one time slot can only be served once. And so it's difficult to spend efficiently, because I can get 1,000 cheap, like I can get so many cheap leads in one market, but I don't have enough instructors to fulfill that demand. And so the solution is, well, let's hire more instructors, but that takes time, because it's not like we can just hire someone and they start tomorrow. We have to train them, because there's a lot at stake here, and we invest a lot in safety. And so there's many months between a region being too much on the demand side, and then we need to increase the offer. And so we're always in an uncomfortable position. If I either have too much demand or too much offer in a region. If everything is smooth, then someone's not doing their job correctly. So I'm always fighting against, it's a healthy conflict between me and the operation side,
Hmm.
where if I'm winning, I need them to then step up their game, and vice versa. Because if they hire someone and there's not enough demand, then they leave. And then we just wasted a bunch of time and money. The employee's not happy. No one's happy. No one wins in this. So we have to always step up our game. And it's a fun challenge to navigate. And but it's definitely difficult to do this efficiently, because you still want to have scale on your side. Like for anyone doing paid marketing or performance marketing, you still want to have large campaigns so that the optimization can have a lot of data points to
Hmm.
optimize. And so the way that we approach this is we split our regions into sub-regions. So let's say we have 1,000 cities that we can serve. We split it into, let's say, 100 different regions. And every one of those regions has what we call a fill rate. And that's like a percentage of how much demand, like how many time slots are available and how many time slots are filled in the near future. And we score them. We have our own internal scoring system. And depending on where they fit, or how much, or depending on how they score, will determine how much we're willing to spend in that region. And then we will attribute them to a corresponding campaign. So we're all on a weekly basis, we're taking regions in and out of campaigns and spending more or less depending on how busy we are. Because a few things, like we don't want to spend if we don't have the capacity for it. I also don't want to spend and bring a region to 100%, because some of like in the next few weeks, I will have organic
Yeah.
sales. I don't want
Yeah.
to pay for something that I would get for free.
Yeah.
And so we have this very sophisticated system where we still have scale on our side, but we target where we spend those marketing dollars.
And what is the time scale of those changes? Is that like from one week to the next, or one day to the next, or is it once a month you're revisiting what's our average capacity look like in these regions?
Right now, we're doing it on a weekly basis.
Wow. Okay. Um, my concern with that would be that the network would struggle to understand what's going on if you're constantly switching those. But
Well, it's on a weekly basis, but keep in mind that the change is slow to happen in any given region. So it's not like one region is going to go in and out on a weekly basis.
got it. It's not
So
like
in
you're
aggregate,
shaking
like,
up
so
the whole
we
mix.
we
Yeah.
update this on a weekly basis, but we might just be pulling 3 regions out, adding 2 in. So the bulk of it remains the same. We also have regions that, let's say, we are really good at hiring, so so a single region might be in there for 6 months. And so in we still have enough volume for Google to optimize. And I say Google because it's mostly Google, but there's other platforms too that we use, but
Yeah. And so do you have a financial target in mind of how much an enrollment for a 60% capacity region is worth compared to a 20% capacity region? If you're, is there some magic number of this is enough to keep that instructor or instructors in that area busy and relatively satisfied? And so we need to pay more if we're lagging behind further in
yeah,
other areas.
because
Is
the
that based on value, or is it I'm trying to understand the sort of mechanics behind or the logic behind the switching buckets, because I think it's really interesting, and I do think that's a sophisticated method.
so okay, I can clarify. So instead of switching buckets, we can add the same region in several buckets. And our willingness to pay for a lead increases the lower the fill rate, because then we are at risk of losing employees, or maybe it's just because we just hired a bunch of employees and now, like, we don't want to lose them because there's a big sunk cost in there. Um, but yes, so to answer your question, our willingness to pay does increase, especially if they are in the lower fill rate, because that means that we've invested significantly in a region, or that a region is brand new and we need to kick things off.
Yeah, yeah. Um, is your plan to take over the entire US and you just have to kind of go state, but like one region at a time? Or are you, I mean, you guys are, I think you said it, the single biggest driving school in the US. If you look at a map, it's still, there's this pretty clear, here's the trend of growth, follows this sort of channel from sort of the southwest across the US. Are you guys trying to take over the entire country?
I mean, yes,
And then the world? Is that
and then the world, but right now so yes, the plan is to take over, the country, but not in the next 4 years. That's not really what the plan is. But we are still growing quickly. Like, we're looking at doubling again this year, and we're probably gonna double again next year. And so it'll compound over time, and then we will become a national brand. But right now, we're going after the big population centers, because yeah, we're following where there's density, because it's a lot easier for us to get in those places.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you mentioned your experience and then coming into Coastline Academy and seeing this like, "Oh, well, this is interesting." Are there any other challenges beyond the supply and demand aspect that makes this interesting? We talked a little bit about the interaction or lack of interaction between the online, driver's ed and the driving instruction. Is that another challenge that you have been excited by, that you've been able to make progress on?
I mean, for me, the challenge that I like the most, I think, is targeting teenagers and then their parents, because it's not clear who makes the purchase all of the
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And so very often you're marketing to teenagers, but you're trying to convince them to get their parents to make the purchase. And that comes with a bunch of challenges. Like, for example, if for anyone trying to sell products to teenagers, it's incredibly difficult because you can't target them to the same level of granularity that you would parents. And targeting parents of teenagers is also difficult, because who are they? Like, it depends. I guess it depends. It's like somewhere between 35, 45-year-old, maybe 50. Like, it's not a well-defined segment. Um, and the solution is probably my favorite solution, which is good old school local marketing. And it's like sponsoring sports teams, sponsoring high schools, being involved in the community, banners, flyers, giving paying football teams for new jerseys and things like going in, like being in parades. And so for me as a digital marketer to have a growing portion of my budget to actually have a positive impact on communities. Um, I mean, I feel like this is what the '90s was probably like. If I can take dollars away from Google and give them to a football coach, I mean, it feels good. And so
Yeah.
that's feel good marketing, and that's my
Yeah.
favorite part.
Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I didn't know that about Coastline Academy. That's awesome. Um, yeah. All right. That's really cool. So we were talking about teenagers versus parents. Sorry, you saw me lose my train of thought, getting interested in like, oh, that is feel good marketing. um,
We get thank you letters. I mean,
that's
you get
awesome.
thank you letters from high schools. I'll never get a single thank you from Google despite spending millions of dollars with them. Like,
Yeah.
crazy.
They don't even send you like a little Google notebook. We get a Google notebook once in a while. And it gets you right here. It feels really good.
God, I wish. I wish it
Yeah.
would send me something.
Um, all right. So you were talking about trying to target the students themselves versus their parents. Are there messages that like generally this works best for the students, this works best for the parents, or is everybody so different that you need to be trying a big mix of messages with both audiences?
No, there's clear messaging for both groups. Convenience for teenagers is the main thing. They are
Mm-hmm.
very short-term oriented.
Mm-hmm.
Like they don't think about driving education as a whole journey. They think about it like what is my immediate next step? Driver's ed. You want to talk about driving lessons? No, I'm not there yet. I'm just like I'm doing my driver's ed. After that, I'm taking my permit test. And it's very difficult for them to think about the rest. So if we can just say we will make it very easy for you to take this immediate next step, that seems to work well for that audience. Parents, they have, they think they have the bigger picture in mind. Like, okay, my kid will be driving my pickup truck, or
Mm-hmm.
my kid might go, I don't know, will be driving to school every day. And so maybe safety is something that I care about. I mean, they do care about
Yeah.
safety
Yeah.
because it's like their most cherished possession is their kid, so
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
want them to be okay. Where at the very least, they don't want even fender benders. Like even if they're perfectly safe, a fender bender is expensive, and so their parents are more safety oriented. Cost is another factor, but I think safety is still the main thing, and then convenience as well. But like convenience is they based on every survey that we ran, convenience is a big factor. But it's difficult to be the most convenient when you have the default driving school that's right next door. I mean, we can have a better checkout flow, but that's not what's going to convince them to go with us.
Yeah. And with typical paid digital, so we do a lot of like, okay, let's measure what was the incremental impact of that. Are we profitable on that ROI? Is that something that you're doing with the community outreach combined with the paid digital program and trying to measure that value? Or are paid digital, I'm measuring this really specifically and accurately, and then the community events, I mean, it's a win-win. It's like,
Yeah, well,
we might not have trackable ROI, but we can see, look at the way our brand is represented in that community.
yeah,
And
you're not going to get solid metrics with a high school banner in the gym. Like you're just not going to get it. Like, yeah, you might have like not even a CPM because there's maybe 1,000 students in this school. So like, okay, the CPM of whatever I paid for the banner. But what we found is, and it's difficult to track, but unless you do a lift analysis, which is what we normally do, but we do see a direct correlation between the more we are embedded in a community on my side, the cheaper the ads because this is like upper funnel. Like by the time that they see, so the way this works we typically convert people who are open-minded to other driving schools, right? So otherwise, you're just going to type in driving school and you're going to go to Bob's driving school. But we need to convince people, like, let's say 20% of a region that is like, well, I don't know. I just moved here. I don't know who Bob is. So like, I'm open. And then we will snatch those clients. But we want to grow. And so if we establish ourselves as a driving school that, one, exists in your area and that serves your area, then half the job is already there. Then when they type in driving school and they see Coastline, they know who that is. And they know, oh, yeah, that's the driving school that supported my kid's baseball team. So they're far more likely to click. And so I've seen over time, I've seen those in those regions, the ads performance increased.
Nice. I love your data-driven approach to everything. Nothing is in this conversation, nothing is, I don't know, you just kind of spend there and it seems to work out. There, every piece of what you're talking about is, yeah, we have a sense. We've measured that. And, nothing in marketing is going to be measurable down to the last dollar. There's always some, margin in the middle. But if you don't have at least some sense, you can burn a ton of money or miss a ton of opportunity on things you should be spending more money on if you're just, well, maybe that might have worked, or there's no reason that we think that didn't work, so we might as well do that. So it's cool talking to you and hearing from the, community banners to the campaign strategy with the different regions. Like, everything is really dialed in to, this is the best modeling that we can do on this.
Yeah, we really had I mean, the company started in Silicon Valley. So like, it was built like a proper tech startup,
Hmm.
even though it's a low tech industry. But we build this. I mean, our two founders are like a guy in programmatic ads and another guy who's like a genius developer, like a
Uh-huh.
software engineer. So like, of course, we'll have analytics is at the very core of what we do. And but we're still very mindful of where we spend our dollars. Like, we didn't raise billions of dollars to take over the US. Like, we still want to do this responsibly and profitably and all of that. And even though in aggregate, the budget might be significant, if you split this down to 1,000 regions, if I have 1,000 regions, I only have a small budget for that region. So I need to make it count.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Well, Renaud, this was a lovely conversation. Thanks so much for taking us behind the scenes of how you're making this work. Such a fragmented, segmented program, but that can still use this, aggregate optimization approach. Really, really cool. Um, let's go ahead and wrap there. So if anyone is interested in learning more about Renaud and Coastline Academy, information will be in the show notes. Otherwise, Renaud, thank you so much for being on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.